the right to, through this patient bill of rights, the insurance company can be hammered from multiple directions with fines, penalties, litigation, if they second guess the good judgment of your doctor.
Yeah,
so we've got rights. We have rights at the state level.
That guy's dead.
And what?
That guy's dead. How do you help that guy before he dies?
We changed the law. You know, there weren't any lifeboats on enough lifeboats on cruise liners until the Titanic sank. Collectively, as a society, unfortunately, you have to have the Titanic catastrophe led to changes in the law, and now you get on a cruise boat, there's plenty of lifeboats. That gentleman died tragically. It was a horrible case. I use it as an example of what drove a lot of the law changes in Texas in the 90s, and I was there for this one in '99. Gary remembers the bill. Insurance companies now in Texas are in a hard place. If they second guess your doctor, they're going to get hammered with fines, penalties, and litigation. It ought to be handled at the state level. The legislature is going to respond a lot more quickly and to public pressure than the federal government. Mr. Jefferson again, you want to have a locally elected official, city, county, or state handle these decisions. Secondly, the insurance company, someone pointed out over here, competition. If we've got each one of us as consumers a huge tax credit, dollar for dollar, for buying private insurance, if you as a small business owner, why don't the government give you a dollar for dollar tax credit for your cost of providing health care to health insurance to your employees, and then let you shop the coverage and do it collectively. The federal law has to be changed to allow you as a small employer or a sole proprietor to pool your buying power with other small businesses, other sole proprietors, so that you can negotiate a better rate for all of you as a group, just like Conoco or BP can. So there's several changes that immediately would give you more negotiating power over the insurance company. And as frustrated, as aggravated as we all get with insurance companies, we have the world's greatest healthcare system, and I, to the last breath in me, will fight to keep the federal government.
Thanks. First of all, thanks for coming out here.
Yes, sir.
I respect you for standing up in front of a room full of people. There's a lot of energy in here. So,
that's why the revolution's here.
So two things.
It's fun.
Two things. First of all, can you articulate what the plan is for unwinding the trouble they've gotten into?
The damage they've done?
Yeah, is there a plan? Because I believe that there's a lot of people who will be right behind that, but no one's really been able to articulate what the plan is to get behind. And the second thing is, I'll use my back. Second thing is, how can I help you personally? I'm highly computer literate. I can help you with your plan.
Thank you very much. Permit me. The problem is I've never been able to do it in a sound bite. The only reason you don't see me more on Fox and other stations is I've never been able to figure out how to slow down when I talk. Slow down. And I have to talk in sound bites. And this is complicated. The knot is really hard to unravel, but it can be unraveled when you stick to core principle. And the first place to start is you've got to find a way, or if you'll give me, this may take me 3 or 4 minutes, but I think I can do it in 3 to 4 minutes. The key is to make the state legislatures walk away from the money. The hook that they've got in Texas and Jersey Village and every other community is the money. And once you take the federal money, the federal government's got you. And I've learned more about this as I've represented you since 2001. In December of 2002, I thought I was going to the Energy and Commerce Committee. I was all lined up to go, and Tom DeLay, who was on the Appropriations Committee, approached me and said, I've been elected majority leader. I will give you my seat on appropriations, but only if you'll take it. I'm not going to give it to anybody else. Which I was very honored. I don't really know him that well. We worked together professionally and politically. He's a fellow conservative, but I didn't really know him that well. I was overwhelmed. I said, you know, I don't really want the job because I'm going to say no to virtually everything. We're, spending money we don't have. He said, you're hired. You've got to do this. Because everybody's killing for this job. Once I got on the committee, and tell me your name, first name. Greg. Once I got on the committee, Greg, and I really started seeing how the federal grants work, I began to understand how this insidious cycle started. What happens is the federal government throws out this grant money, and the state education agency in Texas, the Texas Education Agency, for example, signs us up as taxpayers. They sign up Texas, they sign up Cy-Fair School District or the Katy School District or Klein for these federal programs. The TEA bureaucrat, unelected, unaccountable, absolutely invisible, I don't know who that guy is, signs us up by taking the money. And then we're immediately subject to all the restrictions. And I didn't have any voice in it. Now this has happened over and over and over again. Now, the way I handle it individually as your congressman appropriations is a starting answer. Anybody that comes to the door that wants federal money, the answer is no. Yes, it's very hard to get to. It's got to be absolutely critically essential. If they think they need it for transportation, I say, go look at the Katy Freeway. We did that without any federal earmarks. There's other ways to do this. I had to tell ask Goodwill Industries. Goodwill Industries, Steve Loughborough, they do wonderful work. I really admire Steve Loughborough. As a quick side note, just to let you know how I handle these things as your congressman, led me into this conclusion about how this legislation works. Steve Loughborough came in to see me, and he had every other member of Congress from Texas signed up to let Goodwill get federal grant money for the first time. And I said, you really don't want to do this. If you invite the 900-pound gorilla in the room, they own you. And the federal government runs everything you do. And look at the front of your brochure, Goodwill Industries has never taken any public tax money ever. And I said, you're going to give up that wonderful 100-year history? And I talked him through it, and Steve listened, and I'm really proud of him. He went back to the board, and he talked them out of it because I said no. And I tell all kinds of people no. And the only ones I'll ever say yes to, it's got to really be last resort, although obviously if it's some of the incredible medical research that's done in the medical center. They're actually developing a vaccine for leukemia and brain tumors. You're going to go get a shot for measles and brain tumors when you go to the public schools in 10 years. And that's being done at MD Anderson. I try to help medical, scientific research, critical flood control, a few select areas. But anyway, watching how these grants went out the door, we figured out there's $700 billion a year in grants. What's the final number?
Before or after the stimulus?
Yeah, the stimulus. 800?
It was 600, now it's more like a billion plus.
No,
600 billion.
$600 billion a year goes out the door every year from the federal government to cities, counties, and states that the agencies sign up for, and legislatures don't know anything about it. So now this is going to be radical, but this takes radical surgery. And this causes a lot of what I'm about to tell you, my colleagues, to have heart failure. But I don't know how much you need to solve this. You really got to stick to the core principles. I've got legislation which I will file, which makes every federal grant program in America disappear in 2 years unless the state legislature passes a law, program by program, informed consent, just like he would with the doctor for surgery. Yes, I agree. I agree to all the strings and conditions. I surrender state sovereign control over the public schools to the federal government to the extent that state law is inconsistent with federal law. Federal law controls, I surrender. And it has to be done on a record vote. Now, I have no worries about how Gary's going to vote. He's going to walk away from a lot of the federal money, but it's going to cause a lot of agonizing decisions because they've been, hooked up for so long. Once that addiction starts, it's hard to walk away. It's a lot of money. But there's no other way to break the cycle of addiction other than intervention. This is kind of like intervention. And it does take 2 years. 2 years, it's got to go through the next regular legislative session. I'm probably going to have to amend it or adjust it. But what happens is 2 things. It will save hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that legislatures will walk away from because they can pick and choose. If Gary and the legislature decide if there's 5 conditions on this federal grant, say Texas only wants to agree to 1 and 2. They only agree to 2 conditions, or they reject them all. What will happen then is all of us as voters, we've actually got the legislature on record vote. Right now there's no record vote. There's no way to know how that grant money got spent in Texas. You've got a record vote. You can hold the legislature accountable. You can hold me accountable. You can, in a record vote, they'll have to think about it. They're going to have to go through and have public hearings and sunset. Every federal grant program sunsets and disappears unless the legislature signs back up for it. It'll save hundreds of millions of dollars, but what I'm really after, what really is the most exciting part of it for me is the restoration of Texas's sovereign authority as an autonomous, sovereign state with full control over certain areas. The way I've written the bill, other than what the legislature agrees to, federal law is unenforceable, other than due process and equal protection, which after the Civil War, the only 2 pieces of federal law that all of us would agree as Americans we've got to enforce are equal protection law for everybody, no matter who you are, and due process. We all have to have due process and equal protection, no matter who you are. And those are actually fairly soft tests in federal law. And it took me years. When all the research I did on William Wayne Justice,